Lorraine Kelly's morning show was supposed to be a lighthearted segment filled with charm, laughter, and maybe a few behind-the-scenes secrets about the upcoming James Bond film. But what unfolded that Thursday morning was something no one expected, not Lorraine, not the audience, and certainly not Daniel Craig himself. From the moment Daniel stepped onto the set, the tension was almost palpable. He was wearing a sharp navy suit, his usual cool demeanor hiding what seemed like a flicker of irritation. Lorraine, ever cheerful, welcomed him warmly. "Daniel, it's so good to see you again. You've been keeping us all waiting. The world wants to know if this really is your final Bond movie." Craig gave a polite smile, but his tone was clipped. "I've said before, Lorraine, I'm not sure what the word, final, even means in Hollywood anymore. I think people just like to speculate." Lorraine chuckled lightly, but her smile faltered for a split second. The audience in the studio sensed that this was not going to be a typical friendly chat. She tried to recover. "Oh, come on, Daniel, surely you've made up your mind. You've been playing Bond for over a decade now. You once said you'd rather slash your wrists than do another film, remember that?" The moment she said it, the room fell silent. The quote, infamous from years earlier, was one Daniel had grown to despise being reminded of. His eyes narrowed slightly, his smile disappeared. "Yes, I remember," he said dryly. "And I also remember clarifying it many times since then. It was a joke taken out of context. But apparently, no one lets that go." Lorraine's tone softened, but she pressed on. "I didn't mean to offend. I just think people find it fascinating how you've changed your mind about Bond. You must admit, it's a bit of a roller coaster." Daniel crossed his arms, his jaw tightening. "Maybe because people keep twisting my words into roller coasters." The audience gave an awkward laugh, unsure if it was appropriate. Lorraine, always professional, smiled wider, too wide, and tried to lighten the mood. "Well, I suppose that's part of being a global icon. People love to talk about you. Or talk at me," Daniel muttered, barely audible. Lorraine's eyes widened slightly. "I'm sorry, what was that?" Daniel leaned forward. "I said people love to talk at me. They don't listen." "Not really. That's what this whole press circuit feels like, a series of recycled questions and fake smiles." The control room, watching through the monitors, went into panic mode. Producers gestured frantically at Lorraine to change the subject, but she looked frozen for a moment. Then she forced a small laugh. "Well, I'm sorry if it feels that way, Daniel. We just try to give people what they want, a peek behind the Bond mystique. And maybe you should start giving them the truth instead," Daniel shot back. "Do you really think they care about gossip? Or do you make them care?" The audience gasped. Lorraine's signature composure wavered. "I think that's a bit unfair," she said quietly. "We celebrate your work. We celebrate you. Then why dig up quotes from 10 years ago?" Daniel countered sharply. The tension was unbearable now. Even through the cameras, the viewers at home could feel it. Lorraine's producer leaned into her earpiece. "Go to break. Go to break." But Lorraine, ever the professional, tried one last time to steady the ship. "Daniel," she said with a kind smile that masked her irritation, "I think what people really want to know is, will we see a softer side of Bond this time? Something emotional." Daniel exhaled heavily. "You mean like tears and breakdowns?" "Lorraine, Bond's not meant to cry on cue for ratings. That was the final straw." Lorraine's tone changed, from kind host to firm interviewer. "You know, Daniel," she said, "most actors enjoy sharing their process. You seem to resent it." "I resent nonsense," Daniel replied coldly. "I came here to talk about the film, not to defend my personality." "Then perhaps you should have made that clear to your team before coming on," Lorraine said sharply, surprising everyone, including herself. The silence that followed could have frozen the air. Daniel stood up slightly, his expression unreadable. "Maybe I should have," he said quietly. Lorraine blinked, unsure if he was serious. Then, without another word, Daniel unhooked his microphone and stood up. The producers tried to intervene, waving their hands, but he was already walking off the set. "Daniel, please, we can sort this out after the break," Lorraine called out, trying to salvage the situation. But Daniel didn't stop. He walked right past the camera crew and off stage, muttering something under his breath. Lorraine turned back to the camera, visibly rattled but still maintaining a professional smile. "Well, I think that's all the time we have for now. We'll be right back after the break. The theme music started playing, but behind the scenes, chaos erupted. Producers whispered, assistants ran after Daniel, and Lorraine sat quietly in her chair, staring down at her notes, the ones she never got to use. When the show returned from break, Lorraine looked calm again. But there was a slight tremor in her voice as she said, "Sometimes, live television surprises even us. Let's move on." What no one expected, however, was that the clip would go viral within hours, and Daniel Craig's "walk off" would dominate global headlines. The fallout from Daniel Craig's abrupt exit was immediate and explosive. Within an hour of the live broadcast, clips of the confrontation flooded social media. Headlines screamed, "Daniel Craig storms off Lorraine. Bond loses his cool on live TV. Lorraine Kelly left stunned after on-air clash." By noon, the segment had been viewed over 3 million times online. Twitter, or X, as it was now called, was on fire. Fans were divided. Some defended Daniel, saying Lorraine had been too pushy, while others accused Craig of arrogance. Lorraine, meanwhile, sat quietly in her dressing room after the show, a cup of untouched tea trembling in her hands. Her longtime producer, Martin, entered with his tablet in hand. "It's gone viral," he said simply. "They're calling it Bondgate." Lorraine sighed. "Oh, for heaven's sake. I didn't mean to provoke him. I was just doing my job." "I know," Martin replied. But he clearly came in ready for a fight. His PR team's already spinning it. They're saying he was frustrated with constant misrepresentation in the media. Lorraine looked up, her usual warmth replaced with quiet determination. "Then maybe it's time we respond." That afternoon, ITV's press office released a carefully worded statement. Greater than, Lorraine Kelly and the team at Lorraine always aim to provide an open and friendly environment for guests. "We regret that Daniel Craig chose to leave early, but we wish him the very best with his upcoming film." It was polite, almost too polite. But behind the scenes, Lorraine's anger simmered. She'd interviewed presidents, royals, and pop stars for decades, yet no one had ever walked out on her before. The next morning, she opened her show with a calm smile, addressing the elephant in the room. "Now, before we begin," she said, "I know many of you saw what happened yesterday with Daniel Craig. I've been doing this job for a long time, and sometimes live TV doesn't go as planned. I respect Daniel as an actor, truly, but I think we can all agree he was having a difficult day." The audience chuckled lightly. Lorraine's tone was gracious, but the sparkle in her eyes hinted at steel. "Still," she continued, "I'll say this, kindness and professionalism go hand in hand. We can disagree, we can even argue, but we don't walk out. Not here." The studio broke into applause. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, Daniel Craig sat in his hotel suite watching the clip of Lorraine's response. His publicist, Marissa, hovered nearby, nervously biting her lip. "You're getting crucified online, Daniel," she said. "Half the comments are calling you rude. The studio's not happy either, they wanted this interview to promote the film." Daniel exhaled deeply, rubbing his temples. "I didn't mean for it to go that far." She kept poking old wounds. "That quote, I'm so tired of hearing about it." "I get that," Marissa said carefully. "But you lost your temper on live TV. That's what people remember, not the context." Daniel stood up, pacing. "Maybe it's time they heard my side of it." Against his PR team's cautious advice, Daniel took to social media himself. That evening, he posted a statement on his verified account. Greater than, "I have great respect for Lorraine Kelly and her show. Yesterday, I allowed frustration to get the better of me, and for that, I apologize. The constant resurfacing of old comments made in jest has been exhausting, but I take full responsibility for how I handled the situation. I hope we can move forward with mutual respect." The post exploded with engagement, hundreds of thousands of likes, thousands of comments. Many praised him for owning up. Others pointed out how rare it was for celebrities to apologize so directly. Lorraine, watching from her home in London, smiled slightly when she saw the statement. She turned to her daughter, Rosie, who was sitting beside her on the couch. "Well," Lorraine said softly, "that's more than most would have done." "Are you going to reply?" Rosie asked. Lorraine shook her head. "No need. The public's already made up their mind. Let them decide who the villain is." But fate had one more twist in store. A week later, Daniel returned to the UK for the No Time to Die charity premiere. Cameras flashed as he stepped onto the red carpet, and who happened to be covering the event for ITV? Lorraine Kelly herself. When she saw him approaching, microphone in hand, she hesitated. But then she smiled, the warm, disarming smile that had charmed audiences for decades. "Daniel," she called out. "Good to see you again. No hard feelings, I hope." He paused, looking at her with a hint of amusement. "None at all," he said. "I think we both just needed a stronger cup of tea that morning." The crowd laughed. Lorraine extended her hand, and Daniel shook it firmly. The cameras captured the moment, the tension from before replaced by mutual respect. "Can we expect a calmer bond this time?" Lorraine teased. Daniel chuckled. "Let's just say, less explosions in the studio." The interview was brief, cordial, and exactly what both of them needed. By the next morning, new headlines replaced the old. Daniel Craig and Lorraine Kelly reunite after feud, class and grace on display. As Lorraine closed her show the following day, she looked straight into the camera with a twinkle in her eye. "Sometimes, even 007 has his off days," she said. "But we all deserve a second chance, even Bond." The audience laughed and applauded warmly. And just like that, television's most unexpected feud came full circle, proving once again that in show business, grace under fire is the ultimate comeback.